And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson, running 4 wide here on a Monday afternoon. Good to be back together. Good to be back with all of you joining us live at youtube.com/cover3. If you're listening to us on the audio product, please go and give us a 5-star review. Hey, that 5-star review is a great way to get in a question for a future mailbag episode. We are grabbing questions from the mailbag almost once a week. So if you would like to contribute, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, then please go and do that as well. If you're watching live, smash that like button. Just real quick. That's all you got to do. It's no big deal. Smash that like button, hop in the chat, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that in advance. We have finally the opportunity to do something that floats around on the offseason calendar. You know, every offseason, we know we're going to look back and we're going to grade, we're going to analyze, we're going to give our thoughts on the coaching carousel as it has spun. There was a story, a slowly developing story. We've talked about it more than a few minutes here on the Cover 3 podcast regarding Bryan Harsin and his future at Auburn. So we kept delaying this coaching carousel show because, I don't know, Auburn might open up, and we will get to the coaching carousel here in a minute. But after, I don't know, in an 8 or 9 day span, I think that 6 or 7 of those days included the message, it might happen today. And sure enough, Bryan Harsin gets a vote of confidence from the Auburn administration. We have completed our investigation, our wide-spanning investigation into the head coach in the football program, and we're going to move forward with Bryan Harsin as head coach. Bryan Harsin released a statement. He and his family have seen the best in some people and the worst in some others, and we're really disappointed with some of y'all, and we're emboldened by others. So as Bryan Harsin moves forward as Auburn's head football coach, I open floor here. How does Bryan Harsin move forward as Auburn's head football coach? What is the best path for he and the Tigers if they're going to try to find some kind of level of success this fall?
It's pretty simple. Like, you know, those devices that you see in movies and television that can like scan for wiretaps. He should scan everything in every room he enters from this point on to see if there's any wiretaps. He should check for cameras. And then after he finds out the room is clear, he can go back to coaching football.
But he doesn't cheat. That's the problem.
It's not about cheating. I'm just saying they're going to be looking for anything, because it's clear that a lot of people in power there want him gone and want to replace him, but they couldn't because they couldn't find enough dirt or whatever the hell they needed to make it happen cheaply. So it's going to be a mission from this point on to find a reason to be able to do it. That's all.
It's such a dumpster fire. I don't know if I feel like it's irreparable, and yet you have to run with it. Like, there's no choice. Like, you can't go in a different direction now. Like, I feel like you kind of wish Bryan Harsin would have been like, all right, screw you guys. I'm out of here. You don't want me, but I wouldn't do it if I had all that money coming my way either. So then you're kind of both, because I can't imagine Bryan Harsin's pumped to be at Auburn still. You know, like, I might be done
projecting myself onto Bryan Harsin. He's thrown me for enough loops here where I was like, I don't know, this guy's a wild card.
Maybe so, but I don't know how this is fixed or resolved other than, you know, a disastrous next season. I think the writing's on the wall, but what if he's 7-6, or what if he's 8-5 and he loses a bowl game? You know, like what is the record? Is it a record based, or is it relational based? Is it the players make a push for him, say he's our guy? Is it beating Bama? Like, I don't know, like, what would be enough in any scenario. I look at like the amount of transfers who have gone, the staff turnover. I look at it and say, this year is going to be a disaster for Auburn. So, like, yeah, then I'm kind of like, well, you guys should have just ripped the Band-Aid off and cut another check, because there's so much negativity. And I saw this happen in Florida State with Willie Taggart. Like, you have a fraction fan base. It's not good. Like, it's not good. It's not healthy. And very rarely does it work in the end with a finished product on the field.
So you guys know my thoughts on the long-term outlook for Bryan Harsin at Auburn. I was willing to bet you and give you odds that he would not be the head coach in 2023. But now it looks like he's going to coach the season here in 2022. I think they wanted Bryan Harsin out for a couple reasons. One, he did not mesh with a lot of players. I don't think you can go and be the hard ass in modern day SEC football if you do not also follow it up with recruiting and recruiting at a high level, which is the other thing why they wanted him out. Now, I mean, good on Bryan Harsin for saying, no, pay me my money. And no, I don't want to sign an NDA if you're not going to give me the full boat, right? Because Auburn kind of did him dirty in the way they tried to do it. And look, I think they were probably right to try to move on from him as fast as possible. And I'm not really a big, like, make a quick head coaching change guy, but I don't think it was going to work out there. I thought it was a bad fit from the start. I thought the guys he hired on staff from Boise were not going to be very good recruiting wise. Now they have a really uphill battle recruiting. I mean, A&M is killing it. LSU is going to do better than he will. Certainly Georgia is Georgia. And by the way, Nick Saban is still not retired yet. But Chip, to your question of how does it work out this year? Maybe you start 5-0, right? With Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, Missouri, and LSU, all in Auburn. But if you don't, we're going to be talking about a coaching change in October.
So
inflation's only rising. I mean, $18.5 million is it's going to go down, I think, to 12, and then that means you only need to pay $6 up front, and hell, $12 million might be like, today's dollars might be like $9 million by the time we get to October. So who knows? There's a lot of stuff going on there, certainly. And Tom's right. They didn't find the actual cause, because because is not actually a reason. Shout out The Office. But it's not going to work. Let's be real about this. Like they're basically have kind of a, lame duck season coming up.
See,
Do you think?
Well, I just think that Bryan Harsin is selling something. Like, he imagines that Auburn can be a team that doesn't need to go and get the 5 stars, that it's going to be the OKGs, and we're going to win with culture. We're going to win with execution. It's almost like he wants to imagine Auburn as a what Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky, right? Where, we're just going to win with this culture and this toughness, and we're not going to be lighting it up with these 5 stars. And I just think that just doesn't run with what powerful people at Auburn want. And the idea
Auburn would fire Mark Stoops if Mark Stoops had Kentucky level results at Auburn.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So that Bryan Harsin, even in the best case scenario, if he's not going to play the game of talent accumulation and try to rely on his own coaching and his own player development, then you're never going to have enough time to even see the best case scenario of that working out.
When you say, do you guys think the culture, how much of this do you think is a reflection on Bryan Harsin being too hard and Gus Malzahn being too soft? Because I'm torn on this one, because I think.
You think the transition had to play a role?
Yeah, clearly that's a shock to the system. That, to me, is what the transfer portal is for. Like, if you signed up to go to play with Gus Malzahn, and he's one style of coach, and he's, let's say, a little bit less disciplined, a little bit friendlier with his style, he's just a little bit more cordial with you. And then all of a sudden, let's say you get a coach like Bryan Harsin, who's the total opposite of that. He's a disciplinarian. He wants to come in. Like, there's going to be a weed out process with the players. And I totally get that aspect of it. And I appreciate the players that stood up and were like, no, we're not looking for, like, a guy can coach. If you want a best friend, find it somewhere else. But the guy can coach. And I almost felt like that was not a shot, but like an indictment on Gus Malzahn. Like, maybe he was too friendly. Maybe that's why they were good, but not great. Like, maybe that's because he was a little bit too close to the players. Like, when I saw Smoke Monday's comments, you guys see what he said?
About not knowing his parents?
About, yeah. I'm like, what is this, kindergarten? Like, you want him to call your parents? Like, this is college football. This is a big time business. So what if he doesn't call your mom and dad to check in and make sure they're okay? Like, I get it. Like, some schools may do that. Maybe Gus was that way. Maybe he was cordial with everybody. But I can promise you, my parents in 4 years never got a phone call from Coach Bowden. Like, and I guarantee you he didn't know their name. Now, the thing that Coach Bowden was good about was he'd be like, hey, how's your mom and dad doing? Like, he would ask about them and act like he was interested in them. But there was no point in him having a conversation over it. Like, it just wasn't a part of it. I don't like. And maybe it's just a change in today's player where all this constant recruiting, constant recruitment, maybe you have to do that. But I look at some of the players there and I'm like, stop crying. Go out there and play. Like, the coach wants to win. And some of the players did feel like that was cool with them. Like, hey, our coach is disciplined and he wants to win. But it just feels so fractured now. It's beyond repair. But some of this I do like. As much as we want to blame the boosters, I think the locker room not buying in, and to be fair, Bryan Harsin not to be able to get them to buy in, that's a big part of this problem too.
Did you use the phrase weed out intentionally?
Yeah, because I think you do want to weed out.
I thought there was a double meaning there from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this happens at every school, and we're going to go over the new coaching hires. There's going to be painful relationships where guys don't buy in. And guess what? If you don't want them there, you need to get them to transfer. Like, you might want them gone, So, and I know that's something that has happened at Florida State again, like, from a firsthand level. Like, not everybody's going to buy in, but that's okay. Like, you don't have to have them buy in.
It's okay as long as you replace it with talent. And the talent Auburn is bringing in is not matching up to the talent that is leaving. So they are going backwards in terms of talent on that roster. And the boosters correctly ascertain that. That's why I fully agree with them trying to get him out. I don't really agree with some of their methods, obviously. But, they're not wrong. They see that Auburn is going to backslide under Harsin because they are not bringing in quality players.
But I think I talked about this a little bit last week. The real funny thing about all this is that none of it's going to matter. You could have fired Harsin and hired somebody, and it wouldn't have changed anything. Like, Auburn would recruit better, but they'd still be in the same division and same state as Alabama. They'd still be competing with LSU. They'd still be competing with Texas A&M. They'd still have to play Georgia every single year. And we talked about it. Gus Malzahn had top 10 recruiting classes, wasn't winning titles, wasn't winning the division, wasn't winning the SEC like he did the first year there when he first took over, when he had, they got to the BCS title game. But after that, it was a whole hell of a lot of 8-5 seasons. And then, some wins over Alabama to keep the Wolves at bay a little longer for another season, as he would begin every single year on the hot seat in danger of losing his job. So at least Bryan Harsin will be keeping that tradition at Auburn alive. That's their greatest football tradition right now. But I don't know realistically what coach are you bringing in if you're Auburn right now that's going to change any of that. Jimbo's at A&M, Brian Kelly's at LSU, Saban's at Alabama, Kirby Smart's at Georgia. What are you changing? You are going to be the third place team in the SEC West. That's just what you are until Nick Saban leaves Alabama, and you're just kind of burning all your money trying to fix it when you can't.
John Mack in the chat says, does the booster behavior, does it matter in terms of the Auburn job's attractiveness? Do these tactics and these scandals mean that other coaches would stay away from this job?
Depends on the paycheck, because I'm sure some coaches will happily take $8 million for a year to get fired. But I think that it definitely I think if you're looking for the kind of coaches they're looking for somebody who can win a national title and can bring that kind of process, hell yes, it impacts how that coach views the school, because he's going to have other options. So why is he going to come to your dumpster fire when he can go somewhere else and fix things a lot quicker?
Billy Napier was targeted for the Auburn job in the last cycle before Harsin was hired. When he was introduced at Florida, there was a lot of talk about alignment, about everybody being on the same page, and about things that apparently he felt were comfortable in place and not as unstable at Florida as what was happening at Auburn. I think that if you are missing out on potentially great coaches on the rise, your only other option is to pay out the ass just to get like a Brian Kelly kind of hire. Like you go to James Franklin and you say 8 point whatever, you do something absolutely stupid, because it's very difficult based on the way that things have gone for these head coaches. If I'm a coach on the rise, I'd be worried that whatever happened at Auburn would mess up my trajectory in a way that could keep me from reaching my own peak as a head coach.
Who was the last head coach at Auburn to leave that school for a better job? Whose career improved after Auburn? Gene Chizik won a national title and got fired. Gus Malzahn left Auburn and had to go to UCF. It's not exactly a job that's catapulting you anywhere.
It's also not really it doesn't see itself as a stepping stone job. And I don't know that it necessarily should. To me, Auburn is a top 20 job. It's not a top 10 job. Is a top 20 job a stepping stone job? Where are you stepping from Auburn to? I guess if you really kind of shot the gap and hit it right where you were killing it, right as maybe Georgia opened or something like that, or Ohio State, I guess. Chase Edwards in the comment section, if that was Tom was smiling at, that was Tommy Tuberville's a center in Alabama now. I guess that's a step up.
It's a pay decrease, though.
Some of this is going to, like, I think that even post this shenanigans with Harsin, I think Auburn will be more attractive than it was during the search that got them Harsin, because you're going to have an AD who the boosters actually support and a president who the boosters actually support. And I don't think that was the case during the Harsin search. You had a president that they believed was going to be out pretty soon, and an AD picked by that president who I don't think the boosters really wanted to have quite as much AD power as he did. I think now, look, the boosters may be running this thing, but at least they'll be aligned with the people who have those nominal titles going forward.
When is a school going to figure out they're wasting so much money on things that don't matter and start spending it on things that do? And I think Auburn would be the perfect school to figure this out.
Like books?
Huh? No, yeah. No. So here's what I mean. We should sell Auburn that we could do a better job than Bryan Harsin for a heck of a lot cheaper. Because I'll take the head job. I'll be the head. I'll be the face. All right. I'll be the face of the program. I'll go out and recruit. Pay me $2 million. We'll give all you guys $1 million. We're still way under. We can still go out and hire a really good staff. Bud can run the defense. Tom can be the offensive run game guru. And Chip, you can be the coach of culture. Like that can be your thing. And then we'll bring back Barton. We'll get the whole band together. We'll get Barton in here. He'll be our GM. And guess what? So we're only at about $3 million. Let's take the other 7 that's left over and we'll spend it on players. Because all these rumors about let's actually just be upfront about it. When is the school going to just flip the script and say, instead of writing these checks for buyouts for coaches not to do anything, why don't we take that risk and put it on players and start buying the best classes that money can buy and go get a coach who may not is the hottest name, but he can coach. Like all you have to do is put a squad out there with a pretty decent game plan. And if it's made up of all 4 and 5 stars like Nick Saban has, then maybe you have a better chance to win 8 or 9 games than you do now. Somebody's got to figure this out.
You buy me 5 5-star offensive linemen and a 5-star running back, and I will coordinate the hell out of our run game.
We could probably get 5 5-star offensive linemen for $4 million a year.
Yeah.
Like that or $4 million over 4 years. I think that's probably doable. Like it's what's it take? Maybe. So first of all, we would not host our junior day on the same day that Alabama hosts theirs. Like even if we scheduled ours first, which Auburn did schedule theirs first, once Alabama's like, hey, ours is this day, we're like, weather concerns, right? We're going to move it to this day because we're just that's a market inefficiency that I don't want to go up against. And then B, we know who the players are, right? In the 7-on and the trainer community, and all right, so you need 20,000 to get a bus of these 4 and 5 stars to my junior day. I'm willing to do that. My contract's guaranteed. Right? I'll take less money. Just don't fire me. I just don't want any cause in my contract.
A loosely coached team of 4 and 5 stars is basically just Texas football. What we are offering is a cheaper version of going 7 and 5.
Exactly. And we can I guarantee we can beat Kansas. I guarantee you that. We're going to beat Kansas with our culture because we got you coaching up the culture, Chip.
That's right.
It's way tougher than that.
All right. We finally, because Auburn and Bryan Harsin have settled their differences and decided to move forward, we have completed the coaching carousel. We will be back on the other side breaking down some of these hires as 5-star hires, 4-star hires, 3-star, 2-star, any 1-star hires out there. We'll get into grading and rating the coaching carousel next. So I had a lot of fun trying to assign star ratings. I'm going to start off by saying I'm very proud of my star distribution. I have 4 5 stars. I have 4 1 stars, and I am pretty even distribution across my 2 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars. I found it to be a lot better than trying to go letter grade. And so I'll say that I guess, Tom, this was your idea to tackle it this way. Maybe something that we continue to rock moving forward. So I wanted to begin at the very top. How many 5-star hires have you all identified from this cycle, which, by the way, is pretty significant? 28 coaches changed in a 99-day period, and they were some of the most notable ones in all of college football. LSU and Florida, Notre Dame and USC, the Pacific Northwest powers of Oregon and Washington, Oklahoma, Miami, Virginia Tech. It's a lot of programs that matter in ways that we talk about the sport and in the ways that we kind of play it up. So when we review this coaching carousel, in another offseason activity is always to go back 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and see how those coaching hires and that coaching carousel look now with a little bit more perspective. These are hires that matter. Doesn't mean they're all going to work out, but they're all hires that matter, and I think that's what makes it pretty cool. So what are some of we'll start with the 5-star the 5-star hires in everyone's eyes. How many of them there were, and if there's any differing opinion on that?
I have 2 5-star hires.
Okay. So I was a little bit more liberal.
I've
got 2.
Okay. All right. So what are the 2 5-star hires, Tom?
Lincoln Riley to USC and Mario Cristobal to Miami. I think that it's a combination of everything you kind of need for the gig and far as he's got coaching experience. We already know that. So we've seen him head coaching at different places. They are good recruiters. And they are good fits for where they are. I think Lincoln Riley's a good fit for Southern California, and we know Mario Cristobal's a great fit for Miami. So I think that for everything that you put on your checklist of what those jobs want, they accomplished it. So for me, those are the only 2 5-star hires this cycle.
I agree with that. So at 24/7 Sports, we do not take into account where the guy is going when we do our grades, right?
Yes, you do. Once they go to Illinois, you take a star off of them.
Well, of course.
Barton's already admitted to this.
Okay, Tom, we just try to match up the state tax with our ratings tag, right? So, it's just consistency's sake. But so if Lincoln Riley goes to USC 2 years ago with how USC was spending and what the administration they had, is that a 5-star hire? If Cristobal goes to Miami and they don't have, the Cristobal, as Tom noted on the last show. Danny, you missed this, but basically he's like, hey, Cristobal is bankrolled by all these crypto bros, so he's kind of Cristobal now, which is pretty awesome.
That is great.
So I think that I gave these guys 5 stars because they are proven head coaches. They're both really good recruiters. They both have shown good on-field performance, but also because that they have basically been able to name their price and say, hey, if you want me, you have to get this kind of big time spending up. And USC is doing that, just what we're hearing as far as what they're throwing out for the off-field positions. And so is Miami. So that's the reason I gave the 5 stars to Mario and to Lincoln Riley.
So you fall short. Were those your 2 as well, Danny?
Yes.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I had Brian Kelly and Billy Napier also as 5-star hires. So I had those 2.
Go ahead. So we have different group of 5 stars. So we have to it'll be 4.7 stars, I guess, on some of these when we average them all out. I had Lincoln and I had Brian Kelly as 5 stars. I did not have Mario as a 5-star. I thought you've got 2 coaches that had really separated themselves with a longer run of consistent success. And I still think Brian Kelly, I think he's probably the best hire out here, but the landing has been dicey, which – and a lot of that's personality driven, and LSU is a funky place, and you had the accent, you had, the dancing, and then you miss out on that guy. Some of that stuff is just ancillary, but I think in the end, I think he's got the track record. He's won everywhere he's been. It's got to happen quick, but once he gets the buy-in, I think they could use somebody a little more disciplined like him. So I think I think Lincoln Riley, with the run he's had at Oklahoma, granted he hasn't come up in the playoffs yet, but I still think he's the run of success, I believe, is a little bit longer. So I'm a little bit more willing to trust those guys with a 5-star grade than I am with Mario or Napier.
Does Napier hit 4 stars for everyone?
Napier is a 4-star for me, as was Brian Kelly. And I agree with you.
If we're keeping track of a show rating here, I can take Napier to a high 4-star rating. That was probably my last 5-star in.
I'd say Billy's a solid 4-star for me. Brian's a high 4. The only thing I dinged Kelly for is, and I think that what he did at Notre Dame was kind of it's overlooked far too often by a lot of people, the job that he did and the consistency that he put together and kind of just the foundation he's put in place. But I just, like you were kind of hinting at, Danny, like the cultural fit, I just have some questions about how that's going to work in the long run. Maybe Bryan, he'll adapt and he'll become, just a good old Bayou kind of Southern boy. But it's like, I think of Brian Kelly, who grew up in the Northeast, spent his career in the Midwest, the Northeast, suddenly down in LSU in a place where he's not used to being. And it's like, I understand that LSU has a huge recruiting advantage in that state. And that's, it almost recruits itself in that sense. It's just, we talk about like Bryan Harsin coming into Auburn and his ability to, recruit Southern athletes. I wonder about the same thing with Brian Kelly, honestly. So I think that there's going to be success. I think that there's a very high floor. I just don't know if it's a 5-star for me.
Okay.
Brian Kelly was the one that I really thought about putting 5 stars on. I will say I'm against giving like grades to coaching hires anymore because there's so many things outside of just the head coach that matter, and you have to have the alignment. But Kelly, with the track record, to me, was pretty close to being a 5-star. It wasn't quite as splashy, maybe as the other two were. And the other two are, I think, better recruiters than Brian Kelly is. Not maybe by a ton, but by a measurable amount. And are we just going over our 4 stars, or are we going job by job?
Let's go job by job here. So I feel like we've gotten a good feel for Riley and Cristobal. If you've got any notes on those, feel free to take that. Kelly and LSU. We could go ahead and take it. I know the rest of the guys are pretty much 4 stars across the board. So Napier, Venables, or Freeman, whichever one of those you want to go ahead and grab and get us going.
I put 4 on Billy Napier. I think it says something that he turned down several jobs recently, and he has got Florida to spend more money. Now, I use that argument to make Lincoln Riley and Mario Cristobal 5 stars, and I think the difference here is the proven track record in the Power 5 as opposed to in the Sun Belt, and also the name value, right? Kids out there, boosters out there know who Lincoln Riley and who Mario Cristobal are. I'm not really sure that most recruits or most boosters, if you showed them a photo of Billy Napier, they would know who that is. And I think he'll do a good job at Florida, which is why I gave him 4 stars. But I don't think he's necessarily quite as much of a slam dunk, maybe as the other two are, assuming that level of booster support for Riley and Cristobal remain what it is.
I found myself moving Napier ahead of some of the other hires where we just didn't have the head coaching experience, where I might be very excited out of what you did as a coordinator, but when he's got like Sun Belt championship and proven division titles, those were big time tiebreakers for me that had me moving Napier ahead of some of these other very high profile, very talented based on the results assistant coaches who are getting Power 5 jobs now.
I had Napier at 4. I had Freeman at 4. I have Venables as a 3.
Well, let's talk about it. All right.
Yeah, I
did too.
Yeah, I don't think it's a very exciting hire. And I think that too, like Oklahoma fans, while they will never admit it, I feel like the way that they've responded to everything and the way that they're kind of holding on and they're still very bitter about what Lincoln Riley has done, I think kind of speaks to how they feel about the hire too, because Brent Venables is a great defensive coordinator and he has been for a very long time. I have absolutely no questions that he's going to come in and that defense is going to be good. It is going to be well coached. It's going to be aggressive. It's going to be all that fun stuff. But he's never been at the head of the table. He's never been in charge of the program. And I just don't know how that's going to go. So I think that he has a chance to be, one of those 3 stars that becomes an NFL all-pro player that everybody see the graphics like nobody believed in this guy out of high school. They only gave him, made him one of the top 10% players in the world. But like, I just think that there's also a chance that this is kind of like a rebound more than anything. Like, okay, well, we got to get the guy we know won't leave us. We got to get the guy we know is loyal to us.
Sorry, Danny, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was trying to like come up with criteria, like how do you justify these? So I wanted to have a lengthy run of success for 5 stars. For the difference for me between 4-star and 5-star was meaningful head coaching experience. So that's why some of these guys were left up, because I didn't have Marcus Freeman as a 4-star, though I like it. But the fact we haven't seen him as the head guy taking over that position, I'm just like, and that's kind of where I went with Venables too. Trust me, I work with an Oklahoma guy every day on the radio and Dusty. And I have a very good pulse of the Oklahoma fan base because they're and it's almost like they're trying to sell themselves that they're so happy that Lincoln Riley left, and now they've got their guy who really wants to be there.
People had figured out Lincoln's offense.
Right, exactly. Now I do think it was great that he got Jeff Lebby to come join him. Like, I think that's a huge like feather in his cap, which is going to help things. Their recruiting class, they were able to maintain. Didn't they finish top 10? I think they were still up there in the top 10, which might have been one of the highest of the coaching turnover grades for like recruiting classes. But like you were saying, you don't know how somebody's going to be when they're at the head. I think it might work out, and maybe it is one where, that it's perfect fit, but I got to see more of a run. And for somebody who's always been a great coordinator, some guys are just that. And it's not an indictment on them, a negative indictment. I don't think it should be. Some guys are just born coordinators and they're great at that job. But once they become the head man, it's just a different job responsibility. It's a different job description. Some of them flourish with zero problem whatsoever. Some of them don't. That's why I kind of wanted to see at least some head coaching experience in my 4-star guys.
The 4-star ranking for Brent Venables takes into consideration the position that Oklahoma was in at the beginning of the hire. The fact that Oklahoma did not fire a head coach and then go out to have to, justify that firing. And the fact that Oklahoma, based on everything we could tell, was pretty caught off guard, or at least it moved very, very quickly. And that the hire of Brent Venables, with the presence of Bob Stoops, with the retention of some key assistants as well as key support staff, I probably am given a bump here to the idea of continuity and the idea that Oklahoma was left with a position it did not want, and yet it was able to have a result of getting someone who we've looked at as potentially a good head coach for a couple seasons now, and he gets the opportunity to inherit a great situation. So I'll go more on the positive side, probably lending some lenience towards Oklahoma, since it wasn't like this was a position they wanted to be in.
That positivity is why you are the head of our culture.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay, what about Notre Dame? The hire of Marcus Freeman. How'd we grade it?
I gave it a 4, but that's also mostly because, like, you can make a lot of the same arguments I just made for Brent Venables about Marcus Freeman. I'm just a really big Marcus Freeman fan, and I think he's a terrific recruiter, and I think that he's kind of perfect for that job. And I think that he's kind of got the charisma and the personality for it. And I think that Notre Dame is in a better position. Like, now that I think about it, like, Oklahoma moving to the SEC probably does impact the way I view that hire, because I just don't know if Venables is going to be able to take the Sooners into the SEC and really compete from the start. Whereas I think Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame is probably going to continue having a lot of success.
I gave it 4.
I gave it 3.
Yeah, I'm with Bud. Go ahead.
I think there's a lot to like here, but also Marcus Freeman has never been a head coach. And I think there's a pretty good chance that it works out. But also, this is Notre Dame, and that's a hell of a job. And you gave it to a guy with no head coaching experience. Now, look, there are great examples out there, including the guy who just won the national title, of teams hiring somebody with no head coaching experience and them going and killing it. And I do think he's probably going to improve their recruiting. But do we know what is Marcus Freeman's history of making hires, replacing staff if those successful hires get hired away, managing a staff, managing a culture? All the kids on that team seem to like him a lot, which is a great start. But as Danny noted, it is different as a head man. So I don't like throwing out a whole bunch of 4s and 5s here, personally, unless I think it's really a slam dunk, like, relative to how the program could have done.
I gave him 3 stars in Notre Dame. I gave Marcus Freeman a 3-star. Now, I love the hire. Like, but I was trying to stick to this criteria. Like, you got to have head coaching experience to get there. Here's how much I like it. I think Notre Dame should be worried if he has as much success that Brian Kelly had. The NFL is going to be really attractive, and the NFL, who needs to find more black coaches, if they start looking around, Marcus Freeman's going to be a prime candidate. If he wins in a year or 2 at Notre Dame, and he wants to, maybe he's a college guy for life and he's like, hey, I'm good here. But if he wants to, I think the NFL would come calling for him. He's impressive. He's really impressive.
3-star, but watch out for the NFL. It's like hey, listen.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if he could
Hey,
spring
Cooper Kupp was a
because where
0-star.
But like where I know you could say like you're going to go to LSU, but I was going to say where else you're going to go? What's next for you if Marcus Freeman like and you're climbing that coaching ladder? Clearly, they would love for it to be Notre Dame national championship would be it. But if Brian Kelly saw that he was maxed out, and we'll see like because if they don't open things up with the recruiting and all this talent acquisition business, it might just be getting to the playoffs is all they can do.
But Marcus Freeman could have his eye on Columbus. If the NFL comes and sniffs around for Ryan Day, then he gets to go back to his alma mater and take over a program very open in the talent acquisition business.
Yes.
All right. We got, what about Oregon? Dan Lanning, hired Georgia's defensive coordinator, wins the national championship, arrives in Eugene. You are replacing Mario Cristobal, a 5-star hire for Miami. What kind of grade?
3 stars. Just to be consistent. No head coaching experience. Good defensive coordinator. We know he's going to have an emphasis on recruiting, which I think gives him a higher ceiling. But again, until you're at the head of the table. And another thing too, like with defensive coordinators, like when Lincoln Riley took over at Oklahoma, I was high on that hire because I'd seen Lincoln Riley's offense and I saw what it was able to do to teams because they weren't quite prepared for a lot of what they were getting yet. It's easier to do that with an offense than it is with a defense because, the offense is going to dictate play for the most part. Defense is kind of just, trying to contain what an offense is doing to you. So I worry about that. And that's one of the things that it's like, it kind of limits that hire to me for 3 stars, but I think it's a good hire for Oregon.
4 stars, but I'm already clearly.
Whoa!
I mean, it's
4 stars. We got a Lanning stand over here.
Yeah, I'm quickly seeing it come apart. That when my 4 stars are Venables, Freeman, Lanning, Tedford, Pry, and Elliott, I'm just like, all right, well, I'm clearly out ahead on a few of these names that are going to end up falling a little bit short. Maybe I am not given support that should be given elsewhere. But I think that for where Oregon is at right now, to be able to get somebody who might have a really bright future, it is not all that different to what they did with Mario Cristobal when they promoted him when Willie Taggart left. Oregon is that kind of Power 5 job where you are looking for successful Power 5 coordinators to give them an opportunity, access to all the resources, and the opportunity to win. You could say that Mario Cristobal maybe underachieved given USC falling well short of its expectations during his time with the Ducks and, being in the mix for Pac-12 championships, but not always converting that into a Pac-12 championship, not converting that into a college football playoff. I think that Dan Lanning is the kind of coach and the kind of hire that Oregon football makes. So, I mean, not a 5-star, but I felt comfortable as a low 4.
I went 3 there. I think to Tom's point about like knowing what his own offense looks like, I really think Dan Lanning is probably a pretty good coach. But I think that because people have told me because the defenses he's been in charge of have been really good and he's been a really good recruiter. However, there was still some risk in Georgia taking Kirby Smart from Alabama because that was always Nick Saban's defense. This is Kirby Smart's defense at Georgia. And again, there's a lot of stuff that we just don't know. How will Dan Lanning run a program? How will he manage his staff? How will he make hires like that? Those are all kinds of things that just I need to have more confidence in that if I'm going to give you 4 stars or heck 5 stars.
And how effective will that defense be without 15 NFL players on?
Thank you. That's what makes me a little bit worried about it. Like again, about our formula, us being coach. See, Tom be a really good run game coordinator. He had 5-star offensive linemen in front of him. But and that's essentially what Dan Lanning had. He had all the talent in the world. He'll have good talent, but it's not going to be the same. And he doesn't need the same, to be fair. So he doesn't have to have that much talent to be really good defensively in the Pac-12. What I think is going to make a challenge for him is, USC, if we're all kind of bullish on Lincoln Riley, which I am, and I think they could have a quick turnaround, you're not going to just be rolling out Pac-12 championships, the way that Oregon fans may think you should. I mean, I don't know. So I think that's going to be a challenge for me. I don't think they're going to have a run in the Pac-12 with USC kind of coming back, or at least that's what I think is going to happen.
So we also have, and we can take this conversation here in just a second to the rest of those Pac-12 North changes, but Kalen DeBoer's in at Washington, Jake Dickert promoted after being the interim at Washington State. You look at what Jonathan Smith has going at Oregon State, David Shaw trying to get Stanford back on its feet. As you look across the division, even after the coaching changes, Dan Lanning inheriting a program that should be power ranked, rated, predicted, or whatever, first in the Pac-12 North.
Yeah, but they do lose a lot. So
what do you think? Still the team to beat, right?
Probably.
Yeah, they've got to be the favorite. But that's the problem. The expectation is going to be they should win the division.
Yeah, I feel like the Pac-12 North champion next year could easily be 6-3.
Stanford, Here we go. This is it.
They got that recruiting, top 20 recruiting class. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what about the grades for Kalen DeBoer's hire at Washington? Former Fresno State coach gets the tap. It was one that kind of seemed to get thumbs up more or less at the time. I know that we discussed it in a mailbag episode. How many stars did you give it?
3.
Yeah, but I almost gave it 4.
Yeah, I did too. So I had 2 that I almost gave 1. We'll come back to the Big 12 later. But I talked to Kalen DeBoer. Remember, I was all on Indiana's bandwagon. A lot of it was because of Tom Allen did a great job culturally getting people back, but Kalen DeBoer did a great job with the offense specifically. And then you saw what he did at Fresno with Jake Haener and having the year the success that he had with him. And I like it. Like, he's a fit regionally, having spent some time at Fresno State before and after the stint in Indiana. Like, I think it's a good fit all around. And I think Washington, clearly there was something toxic going on with Jimmy Lake. I wasn't blown away with that hire, but I still think they have some talent to win. And I think they're closer than we might think to being, a contender in the division.
I mean, so defensive performance is much more highly correlated with star ratings than offensive performance is. We know this. It's the same thing year after year. Star ratings are much better on defensive players than they are on offensive players. And defensive coaches, cover your ears real quick because you're going to hate to hear this. That means you can do more as far as controlling your own destiny on the offensive side of the ball with coaching. Mike Leach's offenses outperform their recruiting rankings. His defenses do not. We see this pretty consistently across the sport. I think DeBoer is a really, really good offensive coach. I think he's going to bring some excitement to that program. I think his quarterback development will help them be competitive in that division year after year. And, if they're able to recruit better on the defensive side of the ball, then, heck, maybe they'll be able to actually make some noise there in that division and win the thing. But he's a guy I could see getting stolen away after 3 or 4 years there. He also has some head coach experience.
So Washington is a stepping stone to a Big Ten job or an SEC job or a job with a bigger paycheck. Because in terms of
I think so.
In terms of Power 5 jobs, I consider it upper half of the Pac-12. And
USC took Oklahoma's coach and LSU took Notre Dame's coach. There is no job that
there's no rules.
Stepping stone job at this point.
Very true.
All right, what about Jake Dickert at Washington State?
I gave that a 3. I thought it just made a ton of sense.
You finished the job. You finished the job of the season. Team seemed to rally. Makes sense. 3 stars here.
Yeah, it wasn't a situation where you were excited to be firing your coach to begin with. It was kind of just circumstantial. So to be able to get as much continuity as you possibly can, given the situation, it's hard to say it's a great hire. It's hard to say it's a bad hire. 3 stars.
Danny, when you mentioned the Big 12, do you want to take us to Texas Tech or do you want to take us to TCU?
TCU. I like the Sonny Dykes fit. I do. I think TCU is a program that kind of just, and I like Gary Patterson a lot, but I think they just needed a breath of fresh air. They get it with somebody who, was living on campus at SMU so he could recruit the area. So, he's very, intimately familiar with the Dallas-Fort Worth area, with Texas, having the history of Texas Tech. I think it's going to be a really good fit. So that's the one where I was going to go 3.5 stars as well. I like it a lot.
I'm at 3, and I am wrestling with an unfair judgment of Sonny Dykes, perhaps unfair, that at SMU, they were a team that in ways that we could benefit from in the Locks podcast, very, very different against the worst teams than it was against the best teams. And that when SMU went against comparable or better competition, you found yourself seems like they've got a lot of talent. On most Saturdays, they're able to light up the scoreboard with this offense, but it's kind of inconsistent right now. And I'm using that to kind of curb some of my expectations. That said, as the hire, I think it was a very good hire for SMU. For TCU, I give it 3 stars.
Yeah, I gave it 3 as well. I think that it's a high floor hire in that you know exactly what you're getting because you've already seen plenty of Sonny Dykes running a program. It's just, I don't think there's much ceiling to it.
I was between 2 and 3 here. I think he did a fine job at SMU. What tipped it was the fit, just knowing how well he knows that area. I think will help him quite a lot, as Danny mentioned. But I wasn't like super impressed, as Chip and Tom said, with how they played when they played somebody of kind of equal talent. I'm okay with it. It doesn't blow me away.
So, Bud, what about Texas Tech with Joey McGuire?
There's all these kind of vibes there, right? Like,
100%.
Yeah, I gave it 2 stars. Like it might work out really well, but maybe I'm a dummy for this, right? Maybe I should give it 3 stars because Texas Tech is not trying to shoot the moon. They're trying to find the inefficiencies in the recruiting market so that they can consistently go to bowl games. And if that's their goal, which I don't think it is, but if that's their goal, and I think it probably should be, then maybe McGuire can do that. I mean, I'm almost going to raise this on air. Like, I think DeRuyter's a fine hire. I think Kitley's actually a really good hire for the offensive coordinator side of the ball, given what he did, at Baptist and also at Western Kentucky. But I don't know. That's a bit of a jump.
I gave it a 3-star. Bud, when you're rating a recruit, a high schooler, and it's like, man, there's a lot of tools there. Hasn't put any of them together yet, but like there's a chance for this kid to be pretty good if he gets coached up, gets developed, and figures things out. That's kind of how I feel about this hire. I feel like it could blow up, it could be terrible, but they're also, if things click and they figure out, and his ability, his high school knowledge and his connections in that state, if he's able to get some talent that maybe Texas Tech couldn't get or other teams are kind of unaware of because of it, there's a higher ceiling. So I gave him a 3-star rating.
I go 2. I'm like, I don't know. I think it's a lot of cheerleading, a lot of rah-rah. Like, I hope it works, but is Texas Tech that much different than Auburn, just on a smaller scale? Like the way this unfolded, the way they gave Matt Wells the boot, like boosters get involved. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is like everyone wants the next Mike Leach. That's the expectation. It's 10, 11 wins. I mean, the advantage you have is that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving. So maybe it does become more attractive and that becomes more obtainable. But I don't know. I feel like the expectations are a little off the charts. And with somebody who doesn't have a ton of experience in college and calling plays or anything, like, I don't know. I'll be curious to see how this one pans out. So I'll go 2 stars.
I gave it 2 stars, but I like vibes. I like the idea that there's just this energy. I mean, remember the man got hired and they ended up winning like 3 of their final 6 games or something. I mean, it's something to be said, just not in my star rating. 2 stars.
Those vibes are awesome in the offseason. They really are. Like when you're the new guy, they're great. We had a special teams coach. Now this is NFL. So the vibes don't work at all. And he was big into like the collegial, like rah atmosphere. So he comes in the special teams meeting, and the first thing he said is everybody on the team is going to be at the special teams meeting. So you've got guys that are Pro Bowlers, quarterbacks who never have to go to the team, special teams meeting. Like everyone has to go. Offensive linemen that have been there forever have to go to this meeting. And he has this big meeting, like it's the first day of like training camp, and like half of us don't want to be there. And he's bringing all this energy, and he's like, all right. And it's one of those ones where it's like, good morning. And he's like, what? I can't hear you. No! It was so bad. And then he was like, give me a clap. And he was like trying to do this clap, like special teams cheer. I'm telling you, it was the poorest I'd ever seen a coach received. And you kind of have to at the NFL. You have to buy in, but no one was buying in. I've seen like the false enthusiasm just fall short. Like at some point, you've got to get results. So I don't know. Not to say like I saw him come out at the bowl game, he's firing everybody else. Like that energy is great, and it works more in college than it does in the NFL. But you better win.
All right, let's hit the ACC here. Brent Pry at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, you said you gave him 4?
Yeah.
Explain it.
Whoa.
Yeah. I'm curious on this.
I needed to come up with some grouping. I had Brent Pry and Tony Elliott grouped together. I had them ahead of Jerry Kill, Sonny Dykes, Rhett Lashley, Jake Dickert. And it seemed like a dividing line based on the idea that they had both been high-level coordinators at some of the 7 to 10 most successful programs of the last 4 to 5 years. It felt like a grouping, and it felt like a little bit of a dividing line where it ended up being a low 4-star for me.
I gave 3. For the same reasons I gave Venables 3, for the same reason I gave Lanning 3, all those coordinators. I think Freeman's the only coordinator without head coaching experience I gave a 4-star hire to.
Yeah, I gave it a 3 as well. The offensive coordinator hire there is interesting in Tyler Bowen. We'll see how that works. Again, I think Brent Pry is a solid recruiter. We'll see how much talent you can get to Virginia Tech. The one thing I'm a little bit worried about is sort of the rebound effect, where if you have an offensive guy, then you go get a defensive guy. We're going to get back to our roots. Blah, 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 blah.
I think the rebound is recruiting. Justin Fuente wasn't awesome on the recruiting trail. And
so we're actually going to recruit?
Yeah. And so Brent Pry, who, by the way, was getting prospects from Virginia and taking them to Penn State, it's like instead of losing Justin Fuente and his staff losing recruiting battles to Brent Pry, let's go hire Brent Pry, and he's going to be able to maximize his relationship with his Virginia ties to the Virginia high school football situation and help improve that. Like, it is the ping pong, but the ping pong isn't offense defense as much as what are you doing to keep the best talent in this state, or to acquire the best talent that's in this state.
That's fair. I'm right with Tom. No head coach, and with Danny, no head coaching experience. But well respected as a coordinator. Not really one of these coordinator names though that was really hot for other jobs. Like, people weren't like, oh my God, they got Brent Pry. I can't, they didn't get him and they didn't get him. And who is they? Right? We're just the media on this, and routinely, like, coaching grades are hilariously wrong.
Mine are
they make
right.
star rating grades look perfect. So we'll see.
So should we just stay in the ACC?
Yeah,
because there's a couple ACC names on there haven't got many stars, which I don't know.
How many did you give to Tony Elliott? Oh, and hit the like button, by the way. There's like hundreds of y'all watching right now, and we don't have likes that match up with that. Smash that like button. We appreciate it. Make you a 5-star hire.
I give Tony Elliott 2.5.
Okay. Do you feel bad about it?
Yeah, I do. Because I feel like if this was a year ago, we might all been given 4 stars, or at least high 3. But I'm wondering, because there's one of either two things that happens, like DJ's
2021 season,
right? But to me, like, there still was a lot of talent on that roster. Like, you should, like, great coaches maximize the talent. They don't try to keep calling the same things and then say, well, this is the player's fault. Like, you figure out what's going on with your players, and then you play to their strengths. And it just felt like there were just, why aren't these plays working? And it was very much like banging your head into a wall if you're a Clemson fan. The defense was playing lights out, and the offense just could not develop. So maybe that was all on DJ Uyunglele. Maybe there wasn't an option. I mean, I know they went to Fomachan for a little bit, but it just, that maybe there wasn't another option. But it just, like, so his star dropped a lot. But I also wonder, when I look at, Jeff Long and him together, who were not Jeff Long, Jeff Scott, co-offensive coordinators, like, Jeff Scott hasn't crushed it at South Florida. I worry that it's kind of like the Dan Lanning. What are you going to do when you coach somewhere else without all those 5 stars? Because they had a lot of talent at receiver, ultimate talent at quarterback, great running backs, good. Like, they had talent all across the field. So then you find out if guys can really coach when they go somewhere and they don't have as much talent. Now, Dan Lanning, we know he's going to be able to get the talent to Oregon, but at Virginia, are you going to be able to pull that same type of talent? No, you're going to have to beat people schematically. And that's where I don't know if I have a ton of confidence.
Yeah. I gave him 3 stars as well.
I gave him 3 only because I feel like he was kind of picky with certain jobs. And I don't know Tony Elliott well, but I do know somebody who knows him really well. And this guy was like, look, he's going to take an academic school. Like he's a guy who really feels that he meshes well and can recruit high-level academic kids. And he told me this like 2 years ago. So this is not a hindsight thing. It's just something I've always kind of kept in the back of my mind. If Harbaugh had left before last season, I was like, wonder if Michigan would take a look at Tony Elliott, because that's a fairly high academic institution, right? So I think the fit makes sense. I'm a little not out, but just I'm monitoring the coordinator hires there. We'll see how those work out. John Radzinski and Des Kitchings. We'll see. But I do like that overall fit thing. Like it's not enough for me to give him a 2. So I'm going to go and give him a 3.
Yeah, it's a hire that makes a ton of sense from a lot of different angles. It's just like you were saying, Danny, like for me, when it comes with offensive coordinators, one of the things that gets me pumped up is like, all right, schematically, I could see you're doing some interesting things. Clemson's offense has not really been anything incredible to me. It was just, it had Trevor Lawrence, and before that it had Deshaun Watson. And so it's going to be interesting to see that. But I think Virginia makes a lot of sense from the aspect that if you look at Clemson, which is, that's where Chip cut his teeth in the culture business, because that is a culture program. Virginia is the kind of place, because of the academics, because of all that stuff, where I feel like that could play better than a lot of other jobs. So I think that there's a pretty good chance of success there too.
And when Tony Elliott was asked a lot about name, image, and likeness, like everybody else was on National Signing Day, he was very clear that the players that Virginia is in the running for aren't necessarily the same, where you're talking about NIL bidding wars. And so it's a little bit of a different approach in terms of they're not ignoring it or those opportunities, but he doesn't imagine that they're going to find themselves in that position. It also, it should be noted that I gave some bonus points for that cool $10.3 million that he freed up right before they announced him as the new head coach, when all the storylines or Virginia doesn't spend on football facilities. And then he went back and said, gentlemen and ladies, you can find that money somewhere. And then boom, the Board of Visitors just comes up with $10.3 million to transfer over to the athletic department, earmarked for football improvements. So he might not be in the recruiting NIL bidding wars, but he understands the arms race, and he understands that even at a place like Virginia, which might be leaning more on the academic side of things, you still can't be falling short when it comes to what you're doing off the field. Let's see. Oh yeah. Mike Elko.
3.
I gave it a 2.
Don't
really love
coordinator, long history of being an excellent coordinator. I give some bonus.
It is true at places where you can get talent for the most part. Now, to his credit, he did do a good job at Wake, right? Where you can't get the same amount of talent. I do worry about a school like Duke going defense. Can you get difference-making defensive linemen at Duke? I would go offense if I was at a school where it's very hard to recruit, and I would consider going triple if I was Duke. Like Cutcliffe, I think, did absolutely the best job you can do at Duke. And they made a couple bowls under him, in a row. That is really hard to replicate. So, I'm not trying to be a hater here. I didn't give out a whole lot of 2 stars. I just, how much of what he's done over the last 6 years translates to Duke?
I will say, while you're 1,000,000% right in the correlation between talent and defense, his defenses are well coached. And I think that for Duke, you're never going to get 5-star, 4-star talent on the defensive side of the ball. So to have a well-coached defense that is at least prepared, I think is a good step as far as setting a floor for what Duke is going to be able to do. Duke's not winning the ACC. It's not going to be winning division. It's not going to be doing any of that. But as far as just making a competent football team, I think he can bring a floor to that program on the defensive side of the ball because of his ability to coach up and develop on that side. That is a good reason to go forward for it. And then if they, like you said, if they can get anything going offensively, that's a team that could be, going 6-6, 7-5, getting to bowl games, which if you're a Duke fan, let's be real. Hell yeah. Cool. Just give me the basketball season.
You know what Duke should have done? They should have got a triple option coach.
Yes.
They should have brought in someone because you look at, because I agree with the offensive mindset. Spurrier was a coach who had success, ACC championship, offense, Cutcliffe, offense. I do wonder how this works. Fit wise, being an Ivy League guy, hey, I think that, he gets it, what the academics entail. So he'll be able to relate to the player, be able to sell Duke in that. I don't know. Could Duke be a Northwestern?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
like well-coached defense,
Pat Fitzgerald,
and that
guy,
worked well for them. Yeah.
So, but their offense has been atrocious, and then look what it's done to their.
Right. But they made some Big Ten championship games.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it is there. Maybe we're giving too much credit to the offensive side.
I think that the Mike Elko, his experience at Wake Forest, his experience at Notre Dame, his experience in those private school type environments and understanding at different levels who you're recruiting, the national recruiting scene. I'm in. I'm 3-star in, but I'm 3-star in on Mike Elko. All right. Before we get out of here. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, does anybody else, because I have 2 4-stars we haven't mentioned yet. Does anybody else have any like 4 or 5 stars we have not mentioned?
I have a 0.
I don't have his. Is it Jim
I
Mora?
have a half.
No, it's not Jim Mora. And it's
my half star is Jim Mora because I feel bad for him. Like I covered him when he was at UCLA, so he lived in Brentwood out there in LA, sunny LA, and now he has to go to Storrs, Connecticut, where Bob Diaco wanted to change the paint color because it was too depressing and wanted to give the players vitamin D supplements because they needed more sunshine. Like, good luck trying to win at UConn. Oof. That's more an indictment on the program, though, than Jim Mora. I just think he's in for a rude awakening. I don't know if he understands what he's getting into. What was your 0?
1-4, Tom.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear your 4 and your 0.
My 4 is Joe Moorhead.
Yep.
I think that they got really lucky at Akron that he just desperately wanted to be a head coach again. And he is sort of now I know Akron's not in Pittsburgh, but he's from that general area. I think he'll do a good job there. Like he easily could have gotten an OC job elsewhere and a good one. But like, he's like, hey, look, I want to be a head coach. And I think they got lucky on that. My 0 is unfortunately Ken Wilson at Nevada. And it's not really a reflection on Ken Wilson. This is just like the hiring process at Nevada. They just don't, I don't know if it's accurate to say they won't spend any money. All that is factual. I'm not really sure they have any money to spend. Like, that's the best you could do. I mean, do you guys know who Ken Wilson is?
He was Oregon's defensive coordinator.
Yep. And he's an assistant at Nevada for a while too.
Exactly. I think they were basically just like, hey, can I find anybody to take this thing? Yeah.
I gave it 3 just because of his familiarity with the program. So at least he knows
it's more about the process in like Oregon or Nevada where they're going.
I had a 4-star grade for Jeff Tedford to Fresno State.
Me too.
Literally proven results.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to be a 5-star result, but you already know it works. So it's a 4-star. And my other 4-star was Joe Moorhead, because like you said, but like Akron does not get coaches with that kind of CV. So for them to score that's a really good hire for Akron.
Oh, the other thing on Ken Wilson, by the way, I don't want to come off as like a major Ken Wilson hater.
You're stuck there, buddy.
I am clearly. I gave it a 0.
Way too specific of a take.
You lost your head coach in the same league. Jay Norvell went to Colorado State. Like, that tells me all I need to know about how not committed you are to making a good hire.
3-star.
You didn't lose in the Pac-12.
It's really hard to win there. That's the thing. It's like, that's why, like, too, you saw like every single, like for the last 3 years since Norvell took that Nevada job, you would see like in the coaching candidates list, anytime a job came open, Jay Norvell's name would be in there. It'd be like, I feel like he's trying to like, hey, come on. Do me a favor.
This is a good question from chat. Of the 4- and 5-star coaches that we've discussed today, who loses their job first?
Well, Chip, you got a bigger menu to select from here. You got a couple more 4 and 5 stars.
I'm going to say Tedford because he'll retire. Boom. Easy cop out.
Easy answer.
He did say fired, though.
He just said lose their job, didn't he?
I had from my big menu,
So
I would
hard
say
to see
that
now.
Dan Lanning at Oregon or maybe Brent Pry at Virginia Tech could find themselves facing early pressure at Oregon, probably because there's so much influx, including USC surging. So all of a sudden you're going to find yourself way off pace. and at Virginia Tech. Maybe just because what Brent Pry is taking over from a personnel perspective is going to be, it's going to take a couple cycles for him to get out of there. I would think that both make it a couple years, but from my Cheesecake Factory menu of 4 stars, y'all got jokes. Yeah, I'll say Dan Lanning or Brent Pry.
Give me Brian Kelly.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, it's going to be a disaster. Like I think,
yeah, I don't like the offensive coordinator hire Mike Denbrock at all. Like you watch what Cincinnati did against Bama, you're like, yeah, I want some of that. That's really that's what I need. Matt House, I think, is a pretty solid hire. I do think that where you were on the big board of your school impacts how much wiggle room you have when you get to that school. It's pretty clear Lincoln Riley was either 1A or 1B at USC. Mario Cristobal was number 1, I think, with a bullet at Miami, unless
and 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, exactly. Billy Napier, I think, like it's pretty clear. I mean, I know LSU didn't want him, but Florida definitely did and went out and got him. What choice was Brian Kelly for LSU? 5th?
I thought it was a break glass in case of emergency situation.
Correct,
Yeah.
which means you probably have less wiggle room. And the SEC is about to just have stupid money. I mean, like I think next year is the year they'll be more than double the annual payout of like the ACC. So we might say, oh, it's a big buyout, but it ultimately it may not be that big of a buyout when the money starts to get dumb. So I'll go with Brian. I only had four guys that fit the category. So
Brian Kelly. Any other? How about who's got the best chance to be able to succeed at a high level from this group?
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
I think Lincoln Riley, I think Mario. I mean, you think about the roads to get there. And I think Venables, but I think Venables could be one of those ones that I'd be worried about because the expectation, the bar has been set so high that if it doesn't work, they could, we want this guy taking us to the SEC or as soon as they get to the SEC, one bad year, which I think is probably what Lincoln Riley saw coming down the road. And one of the reasons he thought another opportunity was attractive, because good luck making that transition. That fan base is going to think, oh, we're still getting 10, 11 wins a year. Good luck.
I will say,
does Venables get to coach in the SEC?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he will, because I think they'll do all right this year. Well, I don't know. They did lose a lot.
Depends on how quickly they can get there. I will say though, like that's the thing. Like you mentioned, Venables as being a chance for success. I got to disagree because Oklahoma and Texas fans aren't going to want to hear it. But unless you're rooting for your like athletic department budget, I really don't think you're going to enjoy life in the SEC very much.
And who roots for their athletic department?
That's my point. Like I think you're going to go from especially not so much Texas because you've been struggling. But like if you're Oklahoma, you're going to go from king of the mountain to just some other team pretty quickly.
And they're going to fit in perfectly because they're going to be the new LSU or the new Auburn. We should be 10, 11 wins. They're going to start cycling through coaches. Well, they already do at Texas. So.
I mean, ask West Virginia about that.
Yeah.
Right. Ask TCU. Ask Maryland. These programs that took the check, in some cases because they had to, but then now they got to take the L's. Like you took the check and they're paying you to take some L's when you get to that new league, unless you're like a really, really, really like top 5 type program.
You're at least adding one L. The exchange of competition from the Big 12 to the SEC is minimum.
Utah didn't take no L's. Utah came ready to go.
It took them a minute, didn't they?
It did.
It did. They had an adjustment period, but they also had tremendous continuity.
Yeah.
And they also benefited from the USC, UCLA kind of down cycles.
Floating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the coaching carousel, at least here on February 14th, with Bryan Harsin at Auburn still in place, it is completed.
Please.
Please. We give C+ letter grades to every single one of them, and we hope you enjoyed our 5-star to 1-star rating here on the Cover 3 podcast. We'll be back in like 4 years to look at this very group and see how things worked out and see how right or wrong our predictions were. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Elliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.